Hi, everyone. I am so excited. Today, we are actually back with Halie Baker for part two of going over numbers and business tips with her. She is a bookkeeper. If you haven't listened to the first episode, definitely go back and download it. It's actually one of our most downloaded episodes and full of amazing information. Now, our last episode did focus more on end of the year and closing out and setting yourself up for the start of the new year and those types of things. This time, as we are approaching tax season and everybody's starting to think about that, we wanted to focus a little bit on tax season and then also questions that we have received since the last episode. So, Halie, say hi to everyone and then let's jump into it.
Hello again. I hope you're all doing well. I'm so excited to be back here again, and I can't wait to give you some more great information.
And really quick, please give everyone your contact information so they can reach out if they have any additional questions or want to talk to you about anything further.
Yes, I am on Instagram at beekeepsbooks, and you can also reach me on my website, which is beekeepsbooks.com. Or if you want to just message me directly, my email is the letter B at beekeepsbooks.com. So super easy to remember.
Perfect. Yes. Bee keeps books. Perfect. Okay, so let's just jump right into this. Let's start initially with one of the questions that we received and kind of let it grow from there. But the first question that we received was about pricing, how people should set their pricing, how to increase pricing. What tips do you have about that? I know you have a lot of clients in the beauty industry. What are some tips and what should we be thinking about when setting prices?
Yeah, there's a lot to think about for sure. I get this question asked a lot from my clients, it's multiple times a year too. Right now, obviously, we're going through a recession, and it's hard to ask for a fair price for what you're doing, knowing that everyone's kind of struggling. But it's always good to make sure that your bills are getting paid. If you're going to be out there putting yourself out in the business world, you want to make sure that you're making money and making it worth it for you. So the first question that I always like to ask is how did you initially come up with your first pricing structure? So if you're actually charging clients and doing services, how did you come up with those numbers initially? Did you pick them out of thin air where you're like, yeah, that sounds good? Or did you, maybe take your prices from the last place you were working at before you went out on your own? Or did you actually involve some math? How did you initially come up with it? Because sometimes you can kind of take what you have existing already and then go from there. Other times you might just want to start all over again if you just kind of made the numbers up and said, yeah, that sounds good. So the first place to start is with your expenses. So you want to make a list of all the items that go into each of your services. So, for example, lashes, what your wholesale cost was for each service. So, let's say it's an initial install. How much is it going to cost for you to purchase all the lashes for your client? From there, you want to look into tools. What kind of tools are you using? How many uses can you get of those tools? I mean, obviously, a pair of tweezers goes a long way, but what you're using for that service specifically. From there, you want to look into equipment. If you have, say, maybe more, you need something more detailed for the service, you want to know what you initially paid for that item. And then obviously it's going to have a length of time that it's going to be good for. So on average, I like to say just pretend that you were going to use up that item in a year. So for example, you needed to purchase your lash bed. Let's say that it was only going to be good for 1 year. You want to take the cost that you paid for that bed, and then you want to divide it by the number of days that you work per year. So, if you're working 3 or 4 days per week, you want to multiply that number times 52 weeks in the year. And then you're going to divide that number then by the number of services you do per day. So if you see 3 people, then you're going to divide it by 3 services. That will give you what that equipment costs for at each service that you use it for. Then from there, Other things you want to look at is your training, the certifications that you have to be doing lashes. Take that, again, that large number and break it down just like you did with the equipment over the number of days and the number of services. Some things that people don't think about are electricity. You have to turn the lights on inside of there, obviously, to do your work. So you kind of want to look at what it costs for your electric bill per month. Again, dividing it by the number of days and number of services. If you have a take-home care package, you definitely want to include the wholesale cost of those items. Laundry, if you have a service or if you're taking it home yourself, you want to consider that. If you have an assistant, what you're paying them per hour, how long of the service you're using them for, and then also consider, what you're paying yourself. What if you were working in someone else's business, what would your commission rate be that you'd be taking home per service? So you want to total all of those things up and make sure that you're at the very least, charging that amount per service. Ideally, we want to make a profit. That's what we went into business for. So then from there, we're going to determine the markup. You also can start backwards. If that sounds like way too intense for you, you can take what you're charging now for your whole price and then start subtracting your expenses off of that. So say your service is, $500, you can subtract the cost of your lashes and the tools and all of those kinds of things and work backwards and see what you're left over. If you have a decent amount of money left over, you want to ask yourself if it's enough it's going to be able to, you're going to be able to afford to pay your bills in the salon as well as your personal bills. If not, what do you need to do those? How much more money do you need to make? Then you can start looking at how many services you need to do in a day to get there, or maybe perhaps needing to hire another person to work inside of your business so you can increase your income. It kind of just all depends on where you're at, how long you've been in business, if you're still in the beginning stages, all those kinds of things. One thing I'd like to recommend, and I think I might have mentioned this in the last podcast, was you want to also consider what your personal bills are at home, because then you can figure out how much money you need to make in your studio to be able to take home and pay those bills.
So many things to think about. I mean, because as you were mentioning, the tools you would need, I was even thinking about the light. And there's so many products that you need to think about, or even if you need something to hold your cell phone so that you can film and be able to get content, or a lens for your phone to get content for social media, all of those things, you need to be thinking about everything. And so that you truly can understand your numbers and be able to have that cost, a true cost on paper, so that then you can set prices that are going to cover all of your costs and help you pay your bills and hopefully give you a little extra.
Yes, hopefully. Ideally, you want to be able to have some money left over and then start saving and, retirement, all the other fun stuff. And one thing, after you come up with this and as time goes on, obviously you're not going to continue charging the same price for forever. So once you get to a place where all of these things are covered and your increase in service, what you're charging for the service is increasing and you're just making more money, you also want to consider how you can increase the experience for your clients. So how they can feel like you're spending more time and energy and money on them, because then they feel like they are getting a better experience while they're sitting in your chair. Even though you're charging them more money, they still feel like it's worth it. So things to consider as time is going on. And another thing is, what is your competition charging? Well, say you're in a bunch of other suites and artists, what are they charging? Are you comparable to them, or are you exorbitantly above them? Those are things you want to consider. Or even just in your radius of, say you have a brick and mortar, your own space, what are people within a 5, 10, 20-mile radius charging for their services? And are you competitive to them?
Absolutely. I mean, and something to consider too is when you are comparing to those other services those other service providers in that radius of like 10 miles or 15 miles or whatever is good for your area, that drivable distance that people are willing to drive for lashes from you, is to also look at education and experience. And if you are providing those extras, something that sets you apart to be able to charge that additional amount above and beyond what maybe others are charging in the area. And then you have to be able to articulate that. If you are going to charge more for those services, you do need to be able to articulate that as well, so people understand exactly what they're paying for and why it's worth that additional money.
Yeah, exactly. And that comes in with your consultations before
Yep.
your service occurring, but also with your website, because that's where people are going to find you. They're going to Google and they're saying lash artist in my area, and then how you're popping up on there, what they're seeing is also a huge piece of if they're even going to show up and reach out to you in the first place. So you really want to make sure that what you're putting out is a full embodiment of what people can expect from you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. And that's a lot of information. And I know Halie just threw out a lot of numbers, and probably some people are just like, oh my heavens, I'm never going to be able to figure this out, but you can. And I think a good place to start is, even if you're just kind of like, oh, all the numbers, maybe just start a little note on your phone or on a computer or somewhere, or even a written note if that's easier for you. And every time you pay a bill over a month, maybe keep track of your numbers. And every time you pay a bill, every time you make a lash supply purchase, every time you do all of those kinds of things, just start keeping track of what you're purchasing, what you're doing, what you're paying, because I think that will also help you get a true understanding of your numbers, so that you can actually figure out what it costs for you to do each lash service, and then how your prices should match in that.
Yeah, definitely. It could feel really overwhelming, especially when it gets into math. I know that's definitely my forte, but people in the beauty industry and artists, that's on the opposite end of their wheelhouse. So, yeah, definitely a great idea to pull out a note on your phone, or even just to write it down and keep track of it. You can go through your monthly bank statement, even if you wanted to, and write down what you paid for everything. Or even like every time you do a service throughout the day through your different services, just make a note, write it down or put it in your phone and say, okay, I did this for my client, I did this for my client, because you do it every day and you're not really thinking about all the fine details of it. But once you sit down and actually write it out in terms of what the customer side of things looks like, then it kind of changes the picture for you, and it helps you wrap your brain around all of those ideas at once, rather than trying to think of it abstractly and just kind of getting lost or wanting to give up, because I know it can get really overwhelming. But another thing that's really worked very well for me too is using a spreadsheet, because then I can write down what all the items are and then what the cost of them all were. And you can even track that over time, with inflation being like it is right now. You can see what you're paying for those items now, and then say maybe in 6 months from now, if they've increased or decreased, looking at where you can reinvest those funds or cut back on other expenses as well, to kind of still keep your price the same for your service.
Absolutely. That's great information. Okay, moving on a little bit here. One of the questions we received is the difference between being a sole proprietor or an LLC. So maybe Halie, go into that and kind of talk about the benefits and drawbacks of both of those.
For sure. Yeah, this is a really good question. It can be very confusing when you start talking in tax jargon. And that's exactly what sole proprietor and LLC are. So, at the very minimum, sole proprietor is you. It's you doing business. It basically is an unprotected version of an LLC. So you are responsible for all of the bad debts and liabilities that your company acquires. So consider if you were to be sued from one of your clients. No one wants to think about that because it's terrible and they hope that never happens. But worst case scenario, say it did happen to you, it would, if you were a sole proprietor, you wouldn't be able to separate your personal expenses, your personal, personal funds from your business funds. And so a person could sue you and not only take all of your business assets, all of the money you have in the bank, everything you own, but also all of your personal stuff. So they can come through, they can take your car, your home, everything. So it has benefits in that you're one person, you and the business are the exact same thing, but it can become very dangerous when you start talking about legal items, which is where an LLC comes in. It stands for a limited liability company. It protects your owners, so you can have more than one person. It doesn't have to be just a single member LLC. It can be multiple. It protects those people from their business. So their debts and their liabilities become separate from their personal. So a person who is going to sue you cannot come through and take any of your personal assets. You can't have your house, you can't have your home or your car, none of those things. They can only take what your business has, which can be incredibly protective if you're not keeping everything for your business in your account. You can, pull out your monthly distributions, all those kinds of things. They're going to look at the valuation of it. So it's really scary to talk about, but ideally that is the main difference between having a sole proprietorship and having an LLC.
And question, how do people go about? So say a new lash artist is just getting started and they decide, you know what, I want the LLC because I want the protection. I know that you can do it yourself. You can also find people to help you create LLCs and those types of things. But a lot of times, CPAs and different professionals can be expensive. And when you're just getting started, you need to kind of go on the cheap and be able to do a lot of things yourself. So where should someone go? I'm assuming just like their state government site to be able to get the information to be able to create their own LLC. What's the best and easiest way for someone to do that on their own?
Yeah, this is a great question because there's a lot of scams out there. There's a lot of people who are trying to trick you into giving you their money. So you can definitely do it on your own. It's not as complicated as filing a tax return. So I definitely think that it's something that everyone can make happen for themselves. So let's say you want to start an LLC. The first thing you want to do is decide if you have what your business is going to be called. You can go to your state website for your Secretary of State. That's what it is here in Colorado. It could be called something different in your home state, but essentially what you're doing is you're going into the website and you're making sure that your name is available. So you want to go ahead and they have like a search bar in there. You can check to see if it's being used already. And if it is, then tweak it, to basically get to a place where it's not being used. So then from there, you would start to register it. You'd become the registered agent of your company, or you can select someone else. Usually it's going to be you though, because you're going to be doing all of the day-to-day work on it. And so, all the important things. So from there, then you're going to get your articles of organization. So this is essentially just the proof that you really are a business, your name is legal, and that you can start doing business. And there'll be certain things that you set up that you're going to need these articles of organization for. So you definitely want to make sure that you keep the most recent copy downloaded somewhere on your desktop or printed, whatever. You'll need to make sure that you go in every year and pay the fee. It's usually like $10 or less to keep your name in good standing. And then you'll get another updated articles of organization. From there, you will make sure that you keep it active every single solitary year. And then from there, you can go and do all of the fun and exciting tax websites. So you'll be able to start or get your login usernames for paying taxes for your state and for your city. And it basically from that moment on, you're official. You can delay the start of it if you want. Say you're not planning on going into business for 3 months. You can start your LLC now and then have it ready to be to take off, say on the first of that month that you're starting on. So it's always good to be ahead on it rather than behind, because you definitely want to make sure that you have it legal from the very beginning. And then from there, because you're an LLC, now you'll be able to get an EIN, which is also really important if you ever want to have employees, or it just kind of makes things easier for your business. You can charge things through your EIN and start building credit for your business.
So, random question for you here on an LLC. I actually had a lash artist recently ask me, I'm located in the state of Utah, and she has been trying to set up her own LLC. and she went in and couldn't find a category, because normally when you're setting up the LLC, you have to select a category of business. And she couldn't find a category that best described. She wasn't sure what to pick with the category. I'm assuming in some states, they don't have something specific for lash artists. What would you suggest, or what are some main category headers that would be appropriate for taxes and for setting this up and legally, but that might not be exactly perfect for lash artists?
Yeah, so I think the broadest category that they have is beauty industry. I'm trying to think of the name. There is a really great website. It's from actually the United States Census Bureau. So the acronyms is NAICS. It stands for North American Industry Classification System, which is boring and no one needs to know that. But the NAICS is what the Secretary of State, a lot of, and like your IRS are going to kind of use for the categorization of your business establishment. So if you go to that website and you can play around with it, you can enter in keywords for what your business does. But essentially, it's going to be, I believe, beauty. And I'm on here right now because I can give you the exact one. So there's a couple of them. There's beauty salon, beauty and barbershop equipment manufacturing, beauty supply merchant wholesalers, beauty supply stores, a lot of beauty pageant. Didn't know that. I would probably go with a beauty salon or beauty shop. The same number. It's an on categorization, but yeah, just go more broad rather than narrow. It'll give you the best options, I would say.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much. Okay, let's see. Is there anything else that people should know about setting up LLCs or S corps, or any just general information about setting up their business?
Yeah, you definitely want to go legal. Don't try to get under the radar and not have it thinking no one's going to notice that you're in business, because they will. As soon as you start bringing in money, they're going to want to know where it came from. So always start off on the right foot, be legal from the beginning, and then you won't run into any issues later on. You mentioned S Corp, and I think it's definitely worth bringing up for sure. It's definitely something to consider if you've been in business for a while. Your business needs to be making a profit of at least $50,000 a year or more to consider becoming an S Corp, only because you want it to be beneficial for you. So the main thing about being an S Corp is that you save money on taxes. It can be up to $10,000 or more a year. And the simplest way I can put it is, when you're self-employed, you're paying your Medicare, your Social Security, all of your unemployment, all of the taxes that your employer used to pay for you, you pay those now on top of paying your own taxes. And when you become an S Corp, it takes that self-employment section away from you. You can write it off. So you still pay it, but then you get the money back. So you want to, when you start to make over $50,000 in profit per year, you want to try to get more savings, obviously, so you can keep more of that money. But anything underneath of that, it's not necessarily worth it. I certainly would suggest talking to your CPA or accountant to find out for sure what they think, because they're always going to know the best option for you because they see your books. But it can be a really great way to save money, especially when you have more people involved in your business, or even if it is just you. It's a great way to classify your business and save money. So the simplest way, I guess, I could put an S corp without making it super complicated. So you wouldn't, I would not suggest it to be something that you do right away in your business. For sure, stay as an LLC for a while until you start building that profit.
Perfect. Okay, we got several questions about what expenses you can claim on your taxes. And I mean, I think there's some that are obvious. I know a lot of people think, okay, a business expense, I can claim all the products I use on my clients, and if you didn't know that, you can claim all of those things because you are specifically using them for your business. So all the lashes, all the adhesive, the gel patches, the tweezers, all of those things are a business expense and can be an itemized deduction on your taxes. But what are some other things that people might not think about that can also be deductions and help put more money back in their pockets?
Yeah, this is also another really great question. I get this a lot as well from my clients. So the best way I can kind of break it down for you is the IRS defines a business expense as the cost of carrying on a business or trade that is usually deductible if the business is operated to make a profit, which is like, of course, you would want to make a profit if you have a business. But it's, the most generic way to say it. So in order for a business expense to be deductible, it has to be ordinary and necessary. This means that it's something that's common and accepted by your industry. So for lash artists, it's lashes and tweezers and lights and beds, all things that go into making a service. A necessary expense is something that can be helpful for your business. So something that can help you make money in terms of, we're speaking of things in terms of advertising, marketing, booking software, all of the other little things that go into you being able to have your business, but that maybe you don't necessarily think of. So things that a business expense can't be are your personal expenses, money that you spend on your cost of goods items, which is still something that you can deduct, which is going to be like your items that you use to create a service or retail products that you sell to your customers. They are still deductible. They're actually more deductible. You get a larger benefit from them than you do from just plain old expenses. So things that you can't deduct, I'll start with that because it's a shorter list than what you can. So you can't deduct your gas driving to or from work. It's considered your commute, and you would do that for any job that you have. So they don't allow you to use that. You can't use your car payment, or your car insurance, or your car maintenance, unless your car is owned by the business and you use it specifically for the business, which typically you're not going to be doing unless you have a mobile lash company. Your personal meals. So if you're eating by yourself, it's not deductible, even if you are at work. Your personal hair and nail appointments. I know everyone wishes that they were because it definitely increases your value, but it is not. Your makeup, your groceries, your house rent or mortgage payment, the full entire thing is not. I will get into the portions of it later that are, but not the entire thing. Your personal income taxes, your employees' taxes, and lastly, entertainment. So if you take your team out to the movies to celebrate, or if you go watch a show by yourself, those things are not included in there. And even if it is a business expense, the IRS no longer allows you to deduct entertainment expenses. So the exciting list, the one that everyone's waiting for, is the things that you can deduct. So if you drive your personal car to or from the salon supply store, the bank, or another business-related location, you can deduct 58.5 cents per mile for driving there. You can do a portion of your home rent or mortgage if you have a home office that you're only doing work for your business in. So say you go and do lashes all day and then you come home and then you are balancing your bank account and, writing your salon supply list and all those things. If you're only doing that in that space, you can deduct a portion of your rent or mortgage. So this is definitely something you want to talk to your CPA or accountant about, because there's two different ways that you can do this. Same thing for the mileage. You can take the standard deduction, or you can itemize it, which means you just add everything up. I always like to recommend the standard, unless you're doing a lot of driving or if you have a really large home office. So definitely talk to your CPA or accountant, but there is a portion of it that is deductible. A portion of your cell phone bill. So if you're using your personal phone number for business purposes, say you have a bunch of apps downloaded on there that you're using, or if you're doing booking through it, whatever it might be, you can deduct a portion of it. It's usually no more than 50%, which is why I always like to recommend just getting a dedicated phone for your business, because then that one would be 100%. You can also deduct your, if you have employees, their wages, the rent you pay or mortgage payment you pay for your business space, the interest on any loans that you've taken out for your business, or for like startup fees, or for your credit cards as well. That's one thing that a lot of people don't know, is that you can deduct the credit card interest you pay every month. You can also deduct a portion of your self-employment taxes, your employee employment taxes, if you're running payroll, and then your general business insurance. So some people will have liability only, others, if they have employees, will have workman's comp. You can deduct research and development costs. So say you're considering trying out a new lash company or a different type of adhesive, you can purchase those things one-off and see if you like them, and those would still be deductible. You can also deduct the repair and maintenance on your space. Definitely goes back to talking to your CPA, accountant, or lawyer, because it kind of depends on what your lease agreement says, whether you or your landlord is in charge of making those repairs. But if it's on you, then you definitely can deduct it. Software, this is a big one. So obviously your booking software, but also, email marketing, Google ads, things that apps that you put on your phone, education courses, all these kinds of things. Advertising and marketing. So if you pay for a photographer, or if you have, say, a funnel video and you're paying for the price of keeping that up, those things all are included on there. You can also deduct charity. So if you give money to other businesses, or say you want to donate money to the food bank or items to the food bank, these things are all deductible. You can also do your own education or your employees' education. So any kind of courses you're taking to increase your marketability or your skill set, those things can all be deducted. The internet that you pay for in your salon space, as well as at home, you can do a portion of it there. Legal and professional fees. So your bookkeeper, your accountant, anyone else that, is helping you run your business, a lawyer, these are all deductible. You can also deduct meals that you and your teammates eat together. So those are only about 50% deductible, not a full 100%. But meals for your clients, so say you offer a luxury install service and you offer to buy them lunch or a smoothie or coffee, those things are 100% deductible, and they definitely help increase the value of your service. There's also supplies and materials. So for example, storage that you use to put all of your equipment in, or all your supplies, or even decor. So, the pictures you put up, the candles you buy, all those things that are making your space more you and more unique and more branded, those are all deductibles. Office supplies. So if you buy business checks, paper, even staples, all those things for your business are considered office supplies. There's also bank fees. So if you overdraft your account accidentally, or if they charge you to open a new account, like say it's a monthly fee, then that is deductible. You also can deduct, if your clients have to pay for parking, you can validate their parking for them and pay it. Additionally, you can do any kind of like tools that you buy, like say a hammer or a tape measure that you buy for your salon. And then travel. So if you're traveling, say you're going to a conference, an education course, anything to do with your business, you can deduct all of your meals from the moment you start traveling in the car or get to the airport, as well as your gas and your rental car if you have to rent one when you get there, and your lodging. So hotel, Airbnb, wherever you're staying, all those things are deductible. And then a few other things, salon utilities, your electricity, your water, all internet, all those things. And then your streaming services for music. So say you have a Pandora or a Spotify account, those are deductible because you're playing the music inside your salon. Even if you buy a speaker set to play the music on, that is also deductible. And then if you're going to buy your team or your clients gifts, as long as it's under $25, say it's for their birthday or for a holiday, those are also deductible.
Great. Okay. And so some of the last questions were actually related to just general tips, bookkeeping tips. Again, I kind of prefaced at the beginning of this call, tax season is coming up. What are some tips for bookkeeping, tips for preparing taxes, maybe even just letting people know deadlines? I think everybody thinks of tax season and they think of April 15th, but there's different dates associated with LLCs and S Corps and those kinds of things with businesses. And maybe people might not know if they're kind of stressing out about that, what they can do if they're not ready to file yet. Filing extensions. I know that was just a lot. I just threw at you. But so general tips for tax season and just bookkeeping in general.
Yeah, for sure. So this year's date to file your taxes is actually April 18th. It's because the tax day falls on a weekend. So they always make it the Monday after. For some reason, it's a Tuesday this year. It's the government. They do whatever they want. But April 18th, 2023 is the date for this year. You mentioned different dates. Yes. So if you're an S Corp, hopefully you've already filed because the date was March 15th to file by. So it's always a month earlier for S Corp members. So if you haven't yet, you'll definitely want to talk to your CPA or accountant about filing an extension. And the thing I like to mention about filing an extension is a lot of people think that, you don't have to pay the money right away, but you definitely want to have your CPA or accountant at least come up with what they think your tax bill is going to be due is going to be, because you need to make a payment of your full amount, even if you are filing an extension. If you overpay, they'll give you your money back. And if you underpay, you'll still owe more. But the extension is essentially just more time to finish completing your paperwork. It's not more time to pay, which I think is a common misconception for people. And you can talk to your CPA and accountant for more details on how to specifically do it. They will give you the best way, but the fastest way to get it done is to go directly to the post office with your form and have it expedited for overnight shipping. That way you'll incur less penalties and interest that way. Things that I think are good tips would be, everyone likes to wait to the last minute because no one likes taxes, and they're not fun. But I like to recommend that there's two seasons. There's tax payment season and then there's tax preparation season. Tax preparation season is October to December of the year that you're going to be filing for. Tax payment season is January to March of the year after. So you definitely want to be ahead of the game. I know your books won't be completely done by then, but anything that your accountant might need from you or that they want you to start looking for in the mail, it's a good idea to know by the end of the year. So you're going to have a lot of 1099s, 1095s that come through the mail or in your email box at the beginning of the year. So you definitely want to know what the list looks like of things that you should be compiling for your accountant. And a lot of CPAs and accountants will send you over a tax organizer. If you just ask them for it, it's free, and it has a list of all the things that you should start putting together. But if you make it till March and it's less than a month, actually today it's exactly a month away from tax season, you want to make sure that you not only have all of your paperwork, try to get it all together. Hopefully you've gotten most of it in the mail. If there's things that you're missing, then you want to try to see what you can do to get them. Say for example, you took all of your payments through PayPal and for whatever reason they didn't send you a 1099K in the mail. You want to go into your account and see if maybe they have a digital form, or if you are just completely lost on what I'm even talking about, definitely reach out to PayPal and ask them, hey, I'm looking for my statement that says how much money I took in credit card payments last year. Can you help me figure out how to get that? So try to get those things taken care of as soon as possible. I will say that if you haven't found an accountant or a CPA or even a bookkeeper and your books are not done, at this point, it would not be you want to try to find someone as soon as possible, but I will say most people are going to be under a lot of pressure. A lot of the clients have already reached out to them in the last few months, so they're up against the wire. So definitely try to give them as much details as you can when you initially reach out. A lot of them will try to do a discovery call with you where you'll talk for maybe 15 to 30 minutes about what your situation is, if you've been doing your books, if you haven't been doing your books. No matter what it is, just be completely honest with them so they know exactly what they're going to be up against and how much time it's going to take. In many cases, they will more than likely file an extension for you if you have a really complicated return. When you're an S Corp, for example, you want to file that return, but also your personal returns at the same time. So they're going to need all of your home things too. If you're married, what your spouse's situation is, if you have a 401k, all of these details. Basically, if you have any assets or any money that brought in throughout the year, you're going to need a paper trail to show how you got all of those things. If you're completely lost and you have absolutely no idea, that's okay. There's always plenty of people out there that can help you. And I always like to mention that if you make under a certain amount of money per year, there's also good government programs that you can find to help you file for free as well. So if you go to the IRS website and search in their little search bar, something like free filing or low income filing, you can find some good assets on there and they'll take you to some websites where you can file for yourself. I only recommend using that software if you feel comfortable with it. If you're totally lost on the tax subject, I definitely would say get a professional because it'll be worth what you pay, but also do your research. If you haven't had a bookkeeper or an accountant or a CPA before, make sure you go to Google. I mean, that's the simplest way I can explain it is seeing what their ratings are, reading the reviews on them, and things that you want to look for are people who are good at communicating, good at returning your messages, getting back to you, and ideally, not necessarily, but what would be great is if they explain things to you as well, because you don't want them to just talk to you in a bunch of accounting jargon and have no idea what they're saying and be completely lost. That's how you get into trouble, lose money, spend too much money, whatever it might be. So just be really smart about the decisions you make. It never hurts to ask your friends or fellow business owners as well who they use, or even your bookkeeper. I'm sure that they have a good list of CPAs or accountants that they could recommend for you.
Halie, thank you so much. This has been so wonderful and so packed with information. I mean, seriously, I hope everybody is taking a moment to download this episode and keeping it for notes and all of those kinds of things because this information is just amazing. Is there anything else that you would like to communicate with people and tell people before we wrap this episode up? Who knows? We may need to just like have you on a million times, but is there anything else you'd like to share with everyone?
I would just like to say that, if you're listening to this podcast and you still have questions or things that you felt like you wanted more detail on, whatever it might be, reach out. You can find me on Instagram, bkeepsbooks, and just, send me a message. Say, hey, here's my really specific question that I was wondering about. Could you help me? If I have the answer, I will 100% give it to you. I love to help people and increase people's knowledge. And if I don't, then I can definitely recommend you to someone who can. If you're looking for someone who is a reputable accountant or CPA and you're in the Colorado, West area, I definitely can help you out. But, don't be afraid to reach out to the assets you do have already in your business life. And if not, I'm here for you. So it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate being here with you, Christine. And I hope everybody gets their taxes filed on time.
Right. Thank you so much, Halie. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you.